please tell me where you grew up.
I grew up, I started life in California, but then I grew up in Austin, Texas. And when I was a teenager, I moved to the Northeast, first Massachusetts, and then I finished high school in New York City. So, and stayed there for a really long time. So
What
all of those places.
what was it like moving around a lot in terms of like making friends in different places? Was that a good thing or was that a kind of a
I
setback?
loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it because it was always an opportunity to sort of like start fresh and
Yeah.
be a new version of yourself or because when you're young like you're really trying on so
Mm.
many different versions and it's hard to know what fits but um I loved it. Yeah, moving before my senior year everyone was like that's crazy. I had the best time.
Yeah.
So I
How
don't
old
know.
is, sorry, English brain? How old is senior year? What?
That's your last year of high school. So like the last year of like non-university school, but that
Mm.
would be 17. But when I was
Okay.
younger, I mean I moved schools at 10, at
Mm.
13, 14. I mean, yeah.
Wow, no,
Uh,
that's quite a lot. I moved around schools quite a lot. Where I lived in Scotland for a bit, and then came down and moved, and was in London and went to a few different schools. And I found that it helped in a lot of ways. I mean, because the world is full of
yeah.
so many different types of people, and it's good to know how to interact with different types of people.
Yeah, and not every place is a great fit,
No,
you
no,
know. So
definitely not.
it's always trying to find that thing.
Yeah,
Uh, but I did get one semester of like classic Texas football homecoming, Friday Night Lights public school.
yeah,
And honestly, that was a pretty fun semester.
yeah.
I don't know, like we had a jumbotron screen on our high school football field. And literally, like people who never went to that high school would come every
Wow.
Friday night to watch the game
Wow. So
or
you
had
were there.
no.
Were you supporting and you were into it?
Well, I went to socialize.
Yeah.
I was never too concerned about the football.
Yeah. Nice. So, what about as a writer? Obviously, there is a part of all writers' brains which kind of yearns to be kind of on your own as well, or at least
Yeah.
kind of escaping somewhere. It doesn't necessarily have to be escaping something bad, but it can just be, oh, you just need to go there. So, even though it sounds like you're relatively social, did you always have this little kind of pocket for yourself?
Um, Well, I think I grew up an only child, and so I
Mm,
spent a ton of time
right.
alone. And I am in that generation of like, we were very supervised,
Mhm.
like it was very like stranger danger.
Yeah.
Uh, I was definitely not one of these kids where like I could get on my bike and go like
Yeah.
down
Yeah.
the street. I did have a little creek under my house that I could go like play with tadpoles and things, and that was very cool. But I spent a ton of time alone as a kid,
Mm,
and I would say if you asked like kid me, did I love it? I'd be like, no, I wish I had people to hang out with. But in
mm.
hindsight, I think I did love it, and
Yeah.
I now feel like I'm always trying to well, it's a hard balance because it's
Yeah.
such a beautiful thing to have like friends and family in this life, and
I know.
uh, and you always want time with them. But yeah, I personally feel you cannot write. I cannot write without a great degree of quiet and solitude
Yeah.
and being able to really enter another world.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think that's probably true for most writers. And did you start writing when you were very young?
No, um,
Really?
yeah, I stumbled into it when I was like 23.
Oh, really?
Um, I was in my last semester of undergrad and I had like an open elective class and I took a writing class. And I guess I had taken others, but I just didn't, I wasn't thinking about it.
Hmm.
And then I wrote something in that class that was like a very early version of what would later become American Rapture, which is kind of
Wow.
crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Uh, but at the time, it was like dystopian YA, like totally different.
Yeah.
And I'd never written anything. And my professor, when I graduated, actually sent those pages to his agent and editor, and then they reached out and requested a full manuscript. And like I had a whole
Wow.
plan that didn't have anything to do with writing because I did not think I was going to be a writer. But I had a couple months that were flexible. I was working a few jobs to save up some money for like to go on a big hike.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I kind of have time, even though I was working a bunch. It was like, so I thought I'll just try it. And I wrote a really bad draft in 2 months of a book, like so bad.
Yeah, but
And I sent it to them, and obviously nothing happened. But I thought back during my hike, and I was on the road for a bunch of months. I kept thinking back to that time writing, and I thought, man, I
Mhm.
loved that.
Yeah.
And then I ended up going back to school for writing and doing this.
Was that the first time so that first time that your professor kind of, well, showed you that they thought you were good? Was that the first time you'd ever received like validation for writing full stop?
Oh yeah. I
Really?
was shocked. Oh my God,
Yeah.
I was in total shock. I was literally like working as a fitness instructor and
Wow.
like I did medieval studies and I thought I would be a career historian. I thought I was gonna go back to school and be an academic.
Wow.
Um, which actually is kind of a similar life
Yeah, yeah, of
to
course. Well, it's
it's
writing and
like
reading.
actually,
That's what it is.
yeah, it's writing and reading, and it's getting to spend time in beautiful libraries and
Yeah.
contribute something
Yeah.
to all the work that exists in the world. But yeah, it was shocking. Like I just thought it was just like a fun thing that
Mm.
I did. But
Oh, that's incredible. But were creative in your childhood as well? Did you do other creative
oh
things?
yeah, yeah. I I was acting a lot when I was younger. I actually went to a performing arts boarding school for that. And then when I was in New York, I was really into Shakespeare. I did a lot of Shakespeare plays around the city. And I just never with the acting, like I always enjoyed it, but I
Mm.
never loved it the way that everybody else did. Like I never was like, oh, I can't wait to rehearse. I was like, rehearsing sucks. Like
Yeah.
I just want to do the play.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so I think that it's amazing how you can explore these different sort of like artistic avenues and then finally sort of it is such a gift to find yours
Mm.
because I think some people never do even or some people come to it so much later than
Yeah.
I did. And once I started writing, I thought, oh, of course this is it. And I always loved the language of Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And this is just language.
Yeah, well, I mean, I find loving, I mean, of course, Shakespeare is fantastic, but loving the language of Shakespeare at a relatively young age is, it's quite uncommon. I mean, a lot of people want to be actors, and I'm not saying you didn't want to become an actor because of like the
Yeah, yeah.
performance and the possibility of validation and all of that. But the language of Shakespeare is definitely something that you have to work quite hard to love. I mean, I'm not, you know what I mean? Like it requires
Yeah,
passion, right?
so it's so to me, it's just so electric and dynamic.
Wow.
And I yeah, I don't know. I find it kind of lights up that part of my brain where I'm just like I just feel so like lucky to get to be experiencing it. And
Wow. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I've always been really into it. I'll
Oh, I
probably
mean,
write about that one day.
yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely, and I mean, your writing definitely. I mean, I would say that it is pretty much plain English, but there's poetry in there as well. So maybe that's where it comes from as well. And I wanted to know like about it. So as you were when you started writing properly, let's say you kind of committed yourself to it.
Yeah, yeah.
Was this in your like mid-20s? Is that
Yeah, I was 24 and I had planned to go back to school,
yeah?
for history. And then I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to give this thing a shot.
Hmm.
And I applied to grad school for writing 3 times, did not get in anywhere until my third time.
Hmm.
And then I got into Columbia, which is where I went, and also found like an amazing friend group and my partner, and like it
Yeah.
was a dream. But and then when I was at grad school, I was handing in stories, and I was one of the only genre writers there. It was a very literary program, and that at the time, like it was not like now. Like it
No.
was like everybody was like, "Are you serious? You're not going to ever sell a book." Like nobody wants genre right now. Um, but I was thinking I was going to do sci-fi or fantasy or YA or something, and I was handing in stories, and a professor said to me, "Every story you handed in is horror."
Mm.
And I was like, no way, I don't read that stuff. And he was like, maybe you should.
Yeah.
And I read my first Stephen King at 24 or 5, and I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is totally what I want to do. And then I ended up writing a book in grad school that has never gone anywhere. I
Yeah.
I will definitely, it's my vampire trucker novel. I love it. I'll revisit one day. And then that didn't pan out. And then I ended up rewriting American Rapture after I graduated. And I sent both of those to like 80 agents each,
Mm.
tons of rejections, obviously. And then I couldn't really get anywhere. And then I felt like I had nothing to lose. And I wrote Maeve during
Mm.
COVID. And a guy saw a photo of me working at the comic book shop I worked at and asked the person who posted it about me because he grew up going to that comic book store. And the person said, oh, she's a horror writer you should meet, because this guy was a manager. And we ended up Zooming during COVID, and he read my books that had gone nowhere, and he ended up like representing me. And then he helped me get a literary, like I literally could
Wow.
not get an agent to save my
Yeah.
life. And so
Yeah.
that's my team, is like that manager and agent. But yeah, it took, I mean, if you count the first terrible draft I wrote of what's later called American Rapture, I think I was writing and sending books out for like 7 years.
Yeah, yeah. But I think that's I would say that that's
And a
relative.
standard.
Yeah, it's relative, and it is one of those things that if you have to have love and passion to pursue it despite getting the rejections, and also as you've just described, a fair amount of serendipity. There needs to be some
Yeah.
pushing on until you get that chance encounter, someone who used to go to the comic book store. And also just the fact that you were naturally writing things that were in the kind of area of horror. Did you ever watch horror movies and stuff when you were younger? Was there any part, so that was that, couldn't you identify anything when you were younger that was drawn to the macabre kind of side of things?
Uh, Probably. I mean, I was terrified of everything. Like,
Yeah.
we all had friends who would drag us to the movie theater and make us watch like that, whatever that one movie, The Grudge or The
Yeah.
Ring. It's like, oh, it just scared the shit out of me.
Yeah.
I was so not into that stuff. For me, it was probably, well, one, I did grow up watching Rocky Horror Picture Show a lot.
Yeah.
And, that's really like camp horror.
Oh yeah.
Um, I loved, I guess the movies, I loved Tremors and Mars Attacks. And those are all kind of like, they're fun and
Yeah.
silly. I guess they're all kind of in the vein. Um,
But they're freaky.
they're freaky.
Yeah.
And I always liked kind of the Tim Burton-y stuff. But
Mm.
yeah, I loved Halloween. I've always loved Halloween. Growing up in Texas, we didn't get any kind of like seasonal change,
Yeah.
except that for 6 months of summer, it was like unbearable.
Yeah.
But we didn't get changing leaves or obviously no snow or anything.
Yeah.
And so I would see movies of like fall leaves and Halloween and kids getting to like run around on their own, and it just to me felt like the most magical thing. And so I was always really intense about my Halloween costumes. My parents would help me out a lot, and that was really fun. And I would always go kind of gross and
Yeah.
dark with it. And the other piece is honestly just I grew up in the Catholic Church, and I think that Catholicism, like they don't realize like how dark that aesthetic is.
Oh
Like they
yeah.
chose like, the starving, bleeding
I
Jesus to
know,
like
wounded.
the rest.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And like
Yeah.
we're like drinking blood out here and
Yeah.
talking about demons and hell and like
Yeah.
yeah, just possession is
I
always a
know.
threat.
Yeah, an obsession with guilt as well, and shame, and
Yes.
it's, which is of course is like within all horror, is that is psychological as well. But I think that's really interesting, because I think that Stephen King definitely also embodies that kind of, it's almost like a Christmas like Halloween, that kind of like
Yes,
aesthetic,
totally. Kind of comforting.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I think that's why Stephen King, for so many readers of horror and writers, it's a great entry, because he does talk about hard stuff, but there's a comfort and a familiarity to it, which of course he uses and turns on its head to scare you. And
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that your stuff is actually, there is I mean, certainly with American Rapture, there is still that kind of dystopian kind of element to it as well. You know, you do write horror, but I can understand where that there are these other, you know, kind of mixes coming into it. So it makes sense that you weren't maybe just like a pure thoroughbred horror fan your whole life, and actually you've had quite a lot of influences that come into your writing as well.
Yeah, and even now, I mean, I read everything. Like
Yeah.
there's no genre that I don't, maybe I don't read a lot of self-help, but everything else.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I think there is so much to learn from other genres and that we can bring into
Mm,
like I like to think of a book as having like a color palette kind of.
yeah.
And there are many books that are sort of like black and gray only.
Mm,
And I think that I actually I enjoy that. But for me, what I wanted to write is like I want it to be dark. I want that black and gray, but I
mm,
also want like reds and pinks and
mm,
I want it to be I want every book I write to have funny moments. I want every book I write to have like sexy moments and
yeah.
have romance and have an adventure element. And
Yeah.
I think I really try to draw a lot. I love Arthur Conan Doyle. I love Sherlock
So
Holmes.
do I,
I
yeah.
try to draw a lot. Yeah, who doesn't?
Yeah.
From the way that he built mysteries. And so I think there's like so much to learn from everybody. I mainline romance. Like I binge so many romance novels because you know exactly what's going to happen and yet we keep buying them.
Yeah.
To me, that's so amazing. It's just to see the ways in which people keep something fresh that is like largely like we know it's always going to have the same ending. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I just it's so thrilling,
No,
all of it.
totally. Well, I mean, romance, I think romance and horror have similarities in that they're both kind of like body genres. They both are designed to make
Yep.
be. I mean, I'm not saying obviously literary fiction, all the other genres, they maybe are a bit more cerebral. These books are
Yeah.
kind of, you kind of want to dig into that. And also, it's important, I think, to have light and shade in things as well, right? It's
Yeah.
like you can really bring out darkness if you have the lightness. And like you saying that you liked, you know, Mars Attacks and Rocky Horror Picture. I mean, obviously there is kind of a bleakness, and especially in someone like what who did you say the Tim Burton stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
that's there's a comic element, but it is dark. You know, it really helps bring the darkness out. So I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I want books to feel like a full meal, you know?
yeah.
Like every kind of I want you to feel everything a little bit at least.
Yeah, no, and I think, well, I think that definitely comes across. So, in terms of when you kind of got your first literary agent and you were Maeve Fly as your first kind of book that was sold, I'm presuming, and
Yes.
what was it like receiving the validation after 7 years of working and maybe kind of having absolutely no idea how it was going to happen, but then suddenly it did happen, and the response was very good. You know, pretty much every horror fan I know will at least have heard of Maeve Fly, if not read it. Like, what does that feel like?
It was crazy. I mean, you can't know when a book sells if anyone's going to read
Yeah,
it
no,
or, you know, and we sold Maeve 2 years before it came out.
yeah,
And so there
a
was a
long
very
time.
long ramp up period. Toward the end of which I was so nervous about the book coming out. I couldn't like eat for like, I mean, I was
No,
just like so wound up. But the night, so we ended up having an auction day in which we basically my agent said I'd had a bunch of meetings and which is amazing and
yeah,
insane after everything and some of them were very good and some of them felt like this is not the right fit, but if it's the only offer I get, maybe I just do it, you
yeah,
know, and that's kind of the conversation you have to have.
yeah,
Um, and then my agent set a day and it was sort of like there was 1 week leading up to it and I was just a wreck. And we got one offer at 6 a.m. that day. Uh, and it was a good offer and I really felt it was amazing. And but I had totally fallen in love with this one editor, Kelly Lonesome at Nightfire. And I thought, oh my gosh, okay, but what if she comes in? Like I really hope
yeah,
hours passed and like right before the end of the like day that we had set the deadline, we got the Nightfire offer and it was perfect. It was
yeah,
like a dream. And I went to dinner with some family. I had set up this dinner either way because I was like,
Yeah.
either way today I'm gonna be like devastated or like elated, and I
Yeah.
just want to be with my family. So we went down to the South Bay and had this dinner, and I drank a bunch, and it was so fun. And they had they had a I'm not going to say the D word, but you know, that park in Anaheim, they had like balloons that were the Ice Princess themed, and it was so funny and sweet. And I remember the Uber back up to LA, and I was like, had been drinking. It was a great night. I had the window down, the ocean was on my left, and I just like closed my eyes and thought, like, this is it.
You're doing
Like
it.
this is what everything is like has
Amazing.
been leading to. So it was
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, that's amazing. Well, that's lovely. And have you ever been able to kind of hold on to that feeling as well since? I mean, with because obviously it's a bit like I've spoken to a lot of other authors who have said that, for example, their first moment of validation, like whether it be a teacher saying you did well, they've spent a lot of their career kind of trying to get back to that feeling somehow. I'm not
Yeah.
suggesting that's your experience. I'm just asking, wondering that moment of calm and serenity where you're able to go, oh, it paid off. Like, do you still get to feel that when you, because obviously American Rapture, very well received. Your next book will undoubtedly be very well received. Do you still get those moments of calm?
Um, totally. I think for me, you know, everybody wants to talk about film and TV deals, and obviously that's where like big money
Yeah.
comes in, and and is very cool. But for me, like, I just always wanted to see my books in bookstores. Like, since
Yeah.
I started doing this, like, to me, the most magical thing is the idea that I could walk into a like an indie bookstore and go over and see my book on the shelf and then sign it. And so I think those moments still
Yeah.
always hit me in the coolest way. Uh, the like Comic-Con and like the events and the panels when I first started, it's funny because I had so much like stage experience, but I think being on stage as somebody else versus as
Yeah.
yourself is very,
Yeah.
very different. So I was like so insanely nervous when I
Mhm.
started. I would like take a shot before I go up
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Fair. Fair.
Which great thing about being a writer is actually it's a job where you can do that, and people are like, "Oh, these writers." Um, that's
Torture.
actually more professional, maybe, as a writer to do
More
it that way.
trustworthy. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then I got used to it, and those are fun, and like they can be really amazing.
Mm.
But in general, like and signing lines and doing all that stuff is awesome and events, but like I just getting to see it in a bookstore is freaking amazing.
Yeah, well, I mean, in England, I pretty much every book. I mean, I go around London like reviewing horror sections in bookshops, and you're always there. So don't worry, you're everywhere. So tell me about the actual writing. What is you said before? It's like that kind of sense of kind of peace or being away from everything. And obviously, you live in a country, and I don't know how tuned in you are. Some people aren't tuned in out of choice, but it's obviously a very fucking chaotic and overstimulating place. And you're writing, I mean, American Rapture is heavily about the kind of breakdown of society and all that. So
Yeah.
do you find that writing is a kind of refuge from all of that stuff?
Well, it's interesting being asked that today because the last year here has
Yeah.
been insane. The last few months and especially the last, you know, few weeks, I feel like I've been like this week I've just been glued to my phone because
Yeah.
it feels like every day there's a new freaking atrocity,
Totally. Yeah.
and every day I'm like, where is this 5-year-old kid they took? Like nobody's seen him. You know, where is this 2-year-old? Like you're
Mm.
just everything's insane. So yeah, not to be, well, whatever, it's happening. It's
Yeah.
horrible. So I feel very it's very easy to get lost in that and think like, how am I supposed to just write a book? Like who cares, you know?
Mm.
And
I know.
especially
Yeah.
my fourth book that I'm working on, which is very early for me to be talking about it at all, but it has felt I was feeling like it was feeling a little frivolous, and I was like, you know, it we said, why don't we just put out like a bop, because American
Yeah.
Rapture and Headlights are both so heavy. They're both really big books. They're kind of behemoths, and especially Headlights is all about death and grief. And
Yeah.
so we were, let's just put out a fun book. And to be honest, I'm not sure I'm capable of just putting out a fun book, and maybe that's okay. And so
Yeah.
I did think of something yesterday. If my project is sort of writing America
Mm,
and this Americana culture and figuring out kind of what our culture is here in
mm.
a crazy time. I think I just need to incorporate that in everything. And it can still be kind of a bop, but it's how can you not talk about this stuff? It's so major.
No, exactly. And I no, and I think that's right. And after all, when you're writing about, things like fear and grief and yeah, death, it's like the way that kind of society is changing at the moment. It's also reshifting the way that we talk and explore these things as well. Like I've always it's interesting to look back and like in history, when you look at when like horror fiction actually kind of took off in the 20th century, it was post Vietnam and it was, financial crisis. And obviously I'm not saying it's like as on the nose as when bad stuff happen, people kind
Yeah.
of want to dig in, but you also look at how successful horror movies are now, and I think that it is probably a way that people do in a world where you feel like there's no control over your own emotions, like you and me, glued to our screens, being kind of force fed just
Yeah.
horrible stuff that we can't change. It's probably right. I'm not saying it's right in a prescriptive way, but it's probably very fair to channel your own kind of intense feelings into what you write.
Yeah, and it almost feels, I don't know. It's so hard to, and then you also ask yourself the question of like, will I be able to continue writing what I want to write? How far is this going to go? And
Mm.
even we have these platforms online that we're using for our careers and
They
to
could be,
reach readers. And yeah, and that
they
could
could
be
be
gone
taken.
in a second.
I know.
And yeah, so there's always this question of kind of obviously the future is very uncertain for everyone, but asking the question of like what place does art have here?
Yeah.
And does art have responsibility or should there also be art that is like total catharsis and escape? And all of this feels like the conversation that every artist is having right now. I feel terrible for writers whose books are coming out right now. I know
Yeah.
somebody had a book come out like a day or two before 9/11, back in the early 2000s. Like
Yeah.
you just can't predict. And obviously the things happening in the world are the way more important thing. But and also, people's work is coming out. And so it's an interesting,
Yeah.
you know,
No, there's no right answer, but I definitely, I mean, for me, when I read, I do need to have that space in order to decompress. And
yeah, yeah,
for some reason, I find myself, escaping into more horrible situations, but in my imagination when I'm reading, because I love horror. But I think that I'm basically, like I said, I'm working out how to deal with the constant pressure, and books
yeah,
are a great way to kind of work out. So I think that the service is definitely there, but it's understandable that you'd be insecure about it. In terms of like the way that you kind of see yourself as a writer, because you're talking like maybe you have like you're having this kind of awareness of yourself as a person and the world, and then your art, like are you aware of the things that you give to other people in, like I just described, that kind of freedom? Are you kind of, have you experienced that, people telling you that you help? I know help is a funny word, but you can kind of make people feel better.
um yeah, it's with American Rapture, I've had a lot of folks reach out who grew up in all different religious, I mean mostly Christian
Yeah.
different denominations, but and kind of share that maybe they had a lot of the same like internal struggles that Sophie did in my book, and also
Yeah.
that I did. And that has been incredibly powerful and humbling. And the way that people will really kind of put themselves willingly into a book that kind of is
Mm.
I don't know that my books are hopeful and
Yeah.
they are full of love.
Yeah.
They're not always kind.
Mm.
I mean, I think that life is really hard and can be very cruel, and I put that in my books.
Mm.
And so the fact that readers would sort of like willingly sit there in that, in order to reach anything. I don't know. I feel really, I feel very humbled. I feel very grateful. But yeah, I cried so many times on the American Rapture tour with people telling me things and I mean, it
Mm.
was just amazing.
Yeah.
Um, and then with Maeve, Maeve is funny because it's a book that really activates people a lot, like
Yeah.
one way or another.
Yeah.
And uh there is a big response of folks being like, "Oh my God, she's just like me." And I imagine they don't mean every part of her, but like, I don't know. um, but there is something about, and I think people who feel that way are obviously it's all the weird girl stuff and her interests, but I think it's also just like she's a very loyal person.
Yeah.
And so I think people see that in themselves, and I love that.
Mm.
Maeve also makes people very angry, certain people,
Yeah.
very angry. I
Mm.
had threats after Maeve. I had like people who wouldn't leave me alone, I guess like stalker and like
Really?
oh yeah.
Did you
Oh
ever?
yeah.
So
Cops had to
you've
get
had a
involved at one point.
you had a stalker? Did you?
Well, I had somebody I did have folks who were sort of it was like towing the line. And
Yeah.
then I had someone who made a bunch of accounts online threatening me, but every post was about me, first name, last name, stabbing chairs, all kinds of weird.
God, that's horrible.
Uh, Making up nursery rhymes. That was the
Oh,
weirdest one.
yeah, that's fucked.
With my name in them.
So
But yeah,
it
Maeve
wasn't
is
even
weird.
about the book. It was just about you.
Well, it started with the book.
Yeah.
It started with Maeve. So yeah, Maeve did something weird. Like
Mm.
whatever I put into that book, which was
Such
at
nerd.
the time
Yeah.
feeling like very out of power in my life and a lot of rage and a lot of also
Mm.
what I viewed as like total feminism, but
Mm.
some folks critiqued as like not. Um it- that book has but overwhelmingly people now I think just kind of they enjoy it
Yeah.
and they're like, fun book, thank you, and move on.
Yeah, but it is a fun book, but it is also, I think, rage is and anger is for me, it's one of the reasons why I read horror is because in my life, find it quite hard to access those feelings. And so
Mm,
it's good to read something which puts the voice of anger in your head. And then I can kind of like role play in my head, as I remember reading Maeve
yeah,
Fly and really enjoying. Obviously, I mean, it's not really, I mean, it's kind of nihilistic, but there is definitely more purpose to it than that. It felt a lot more. I mean, in the same way that Headlights, I think, is a grim book, but the way that it talks about grief and the way that it's obviously got this very kind of entertaining mystery that goes alongside it, where you're kind of working out what is this thing and who's doing it, who are these people who are appearing on the road and stuff. And what was it like writing something that was, yeah, dealing with, I mean, one of the biggest and most profound experiences that a human can have, which is grief?
good question.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
yeah,
what is yeah, where do they go? What is
yeah,
death?
yeah,
Well, I think my philosophy on horror in general, because people are always so like, why do you choose that? Why would
yeah,
you do that?
yeah,
And I think for me, death is a massive part of life. I mean, you could argue it's like the biggest part of
the
life
yeah,
because our mortality kind of dictates everything.
yeah, it does.
And it's such an uncertainty.
Mm,
And it is the one thing every single one of us will experience 100%, every one of us, you know.
mm,
And so to me, I feel like I'm very comfortable sitting and looking at death. And I think it's important that people who are
mm,
do it and then, kind of stumble around in the dark and sort it out and try and metabolize it
yeah,
and kind of give it back to everybody else in a way that might help a little bit because this grief thing can be so just blindsiding and overwhelming.
yeah,
And uh I think it's hugely important. I mean, I was struggling obviously with grief for the whole writing of this book. um I had a very strange, like, my childhood, like nobody died. Like I was
yeah,
so lucky
yeah,
growing up and I didn't really have anybody die until I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
And then it was about 10 years of
Death.
constant.
Yeah, yeah.
It was crazy. Yeah, like every year, um, humans and like my dogs, and
Yeah.
just it was just brutal. And still I'm so lucky because I got to have this childhood,
Yeah.
mostly without that. And that is like actually pretty rare, I think. So all to say, it's a huge part of life. I feel it's important to look at. And also I think it's important to get comfortable with and kind of
Yeah.
find hope in. And I think we can in a way. And so that was kind of Headlights was like stumbling around in the dark, which is also what grief feels like to me. And it was a weird book because these characters appeared to me very suddenly, and I knew I had to write it, but I couldn't quite. It took me a long time. I think it took me like 5 years to get this book finished.
Oh,
And
really? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I kept starting over, and I didn't quite know how to tell their story. And it kind of felt like this thing of like, it was like they were like lights in the dark, and I was just trying to follow them. But, I would lose them sometimes and be like, where did they go?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And where do they want me to go? And then ultimately, I think I found it. And it's a weird book. I think it'll be interesting to see if folks will kind of like, I think a lot of readers approach reading these days as like, I'm expecting it to be this. So if it's this, I'm really happy. And if it's not, then I'm not. And it is,
Maybe, maybe
you
I would.
know,
My experience of it, because I read it last month, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm a big fan, of like the noir kind of stuff as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
So I really,
Thank you.
I really liked the kind of dual timeline, and I've appreciated the way that the character development unfolded, and so I really enjoyed it. I think I don't. I guess for me, it's like with horror, I'm always surprised, or not anymore, but people often who read horror are they have experienced sometimes or oftentimes something quite profound, and it's and in terms of loss, and
Mm,
it's often the people who don't like horror who are maybe a bit like, I don't want to think about it, I don't what of course that makes sense, like you don't want to think about
yeah.
death, so you're not going to read horror, but there are so many people who really engage with it. So I think because of the way that I felt when I read it, that it explores grief or in an authentic way, I'm sure many people will read it, and even if it's not what they were expecting from you, I'm sure it will nourish them in another way. And
I hope
third
so.
third
Thank you.
book as well, that's a hard it's a hard one. I mean, second book's hard, but third, is you've got to have a little bit of license to go a little bit outside what you.
Yeah. I just wanted to
Yeah.
create a space where, like, moving forward, I can write anything I want to write as long as it's in horror and as long as it has some kind of like element of a feeling of one of my books, which is probably going to be like Americana
Mm.
backdrops, and also like hopefully like a little bit of like humor
Yeah, yeah, no,
and
no, definitely.
all those other things.
Yeah, and you can't. I mean, it would probably be quite hard for you to see it, but you definitely have a voice. You have a clear kind of vibe, even if you are writing in kind of different tropes and stuff. But I think I feel it's always dangerous to try and predict trend and trying
Oh
to
yeah,
kind
you
of,
can.
it's all marketing at the end of the day, and it really,
Yeah.
your voice is always, I would say, having read all of your books, that it comes through. So it shouldn't be, but there's fucking marketing. That's what they do. I want to finish by asking you: you said that you read widely, and do you blurb a lot?
Um, yeah. Complicated question. I was blurbing a ton,
Yeah,
and I got really burnt out and kind of felt like I was unable to keep up with my workload. So I stopped. And also we evacuated after the fires this last year, and
yeah.
we've been living on the road for a
Wow.
year. So like,
Yeah.
life had new complications that took a lot of brain space for me and time.
Mm.
But I stopped for a while,
Yeah.
and then I've basically opened it back up to I will blurb debut authors because I think they are the
That's
ones
lovely.
who really benefit from it.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, my friends, because they're my friends and I'm reading the books early. But in general, I do think I don't know if you've seen, but I post I've actually been asking people not to blurb headlights because it's my third book,
Yeah,
And I really benefited from the blurbs, especially on Maeve, but on American Rapture too, when I was kind of coming onto the scene. I don't need that now. They can easily repurpose
yeah,
old blurbs. And when I see my friends who are authors, every one of them, every time, talks about how burnt out they are, how their relationship with reading has totally changed. Like
totally. Yeah,
it starts to feel so transactional. You're not even typically talking to the authors. It's like editors and agents emailing you
yeah.
constantly. Like
Mm.
there are certain editors who, and no shade, like they're doing
No,
their
no.
job, they're crushing it, but like I will literally get emails every week.
Yeah,
And it's just, I think publishers should be paying, it's a controversial opinion. I think authors should be paid to blurb because it doesn't make it any less authentic. It's already a barter system and already kind
yeah.
of
Of course. Yeah,
a lot of times. And additionally, uh, it is free labor they're asking for. These are like
yeah.
huge corporations, a lot of them. I know not indies, but like, they can, it's just
No, I
silly and it puts so much burden on authors.
No, totally. I mean, the same kind of feeling I think can be attributed as well to book reviewers these days. Like
Yeah.
people are reading, and I mean, great. I mean, I wish I could read 150 books in a year. But people that I think there's a kind of gamification to it as well, and there's a kind of anxiety about read. As soon as you start kind of tapping into that anxiety about I must be reading, it doesn't work well. It definitely ruins your relationship with reading, I think. So that's understandable. But what about but you still have you found managed to, since obviously the upheaval in your life, you've kind of found a space where you can read for pleasure?
Yeah, I'm just starting to again, and it's really nice. I went to my PO box and I picked up, I had like 20 debut novels in there, and I was
Wow.
like, let's go. Hell yeah. And so I'm having a lot of fun and I'm feeling very inspired, and I am listening to on audio all of the Heated Rivalry books, so
Yes.
that is great.
Yeah.
And also King Sorrow, which is
Yes.
a behemoth,
Yes.
but I'm loving it.
Yeah. Are you listening to that or are you reading it?
Yeah, listening. And it's
Yeah.
like a full cast. It's cool.
Yeah, I love full cast audiobooks. And also I'm intimidated by, well, I mean, King, sorry, it's got to be, what is it, 700 pages? Oh, it's maybe even longer than that. I don't
It
know.
might be
It's a
longer.
big old book. I get a bit
It's a
scared of it,
big
but
book.
that's what audiobooks are great for that. But yeah, no, that's great. I'm yet to read King Sorrow. Well, thank you very much for talking to me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.